everyone, I'm Carla Simon. Welcome to the webinar on Ask the Sniffer Dog Trainer. This is brought to you by the Canadian Association of Professional Dog Trainers. And I'm sorry it's a re-recording. The live webinar was July 10th, but the recording didn't work. So here I am doing it solo and trying to remain faithful to the original. So a little bit about me before we get started. I'm currently chairing the Working Dog Committee for the Canadian Association of Professional Dog Trainers, and I'm known for applying the latest scientific research to scent detection training. From bed bugs to birds, from human remains to nosework competition for pet dogs, I've trained all types and breeds and sizes and ages and abilities of dogs for detection dog work, service dogs, and dog sports partners. I was a member of the CKC Scent Detection Council, and I continue to judge CKC nosework competitions, as well as Canine ABC games, and UKC nosework as well. My materials have been adopted worldwide, so I've performed at the Chan Center for Performing Arts, at the World Detector Dog Organization, and I'm an author and peer reviewer for the International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants. I'm cited on academia.edu, and thanks to our viewers for over 165,000 views on YouTube. The link is a link to my online courses that are open for registration now, and check out my free blog where there's free resources like scent detection glossary of terms and the latest news in scent detection. So today's presentation is a re-recording. The main goal is to hold office hours where you can get answers to your questions, thanks to the people who submitted questions in advance. And the only right way is the way that works for you and your unique dog. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Let's talk about what usually works, what doesn't, and when it depends. So this graphic shows you the scent detection behavior chain. It's a continuous series of behaviors, and it starts with motivation for your dog to search the environment for the target odor you want them to find for you. They detect the odor. Number 3 is they pinpoint its location, which is known as source. So that's the highest concentration of target odor. They indicate when they've made a decision, they show the handler exactly where source is located, and then they receive their reward. Hot means that the target scent is present. Cold means there is no target odor present. And blind searches mean the handler don't know where the target odor is, or even if there is target odor or not. You can learn all about the behavior chain in detail in my IAABC journal article and the links below. Sometimes scent detection seems so broad that you can get analysis paralysis. So it helps to focus on training the final link first, and that's a really effective way of training scent detection. Why bother? Well, imagine you want to learn pole vaulting. That might seem like a big barrier at first. So a good step to start with is to plan and practice landing safely first. Then every subsequent jump rehearses your solid landing. In comparison, if you take the jump before you know how to land, you're going to experience uncertainty because you don't know what happens next. And you're more likely to crash, which harms your motivation. So you want to get the last step right before you repeatedly practice crashing. And the same is true of scent detection training. So here's a video showing what it looks like to backchain scent detection. And you can also see it in Vimeo at the link below. Hi everyone, I'm Carla Simon from Hunter's Heart, and this video is about how we backchain scent detection training. We teach the dog what to do when they find the odor first, and then we work backwards from there. We begin by motivating the dog to play with a favorite toy, like a food stuffed ball or some other reward. Once the value for the toy is established,
We teach the dog to show the handler where the toy is located by performing an indication behavior, such as sitting or lying down and staring at the toy until released to the reward. This is the stage where we train the dog what to do and what not to do to earn rewards. So for example, when undesirable behaviors like digging and biting at the object happen, then we withhold the rewards. One advantage to this method of training scent detection is that if the handler pushes the dog too hard, too fast, beyond its capabilities, then they can just start anew with a new toy. And then the dog's desire to find target odor is not diminished. The rate of reinforcement has to remain very high. So we split to small, easy to achieve baby steps. The most important thing is it has to be fun. This has to be a game that the dog wants to play every day, searching for long periods of time, even when there's no odor present. So the desire to earn those rewards is what produces the motivation to search. Once we're happy with the dog's indication, then we add the search. Now the dog searches an area determined by the handler, finds their toy, and indicates it. Subsequently, we progress to cutting that toy into smaller pieces that the dog can find. When the piece is small, the intensity of the odor is less. So it's harder for the dog to pinpoint the highest concentration of odor, known as source. Afterward, we add the target odor to the toy. The dog learns to find the toy and the target scent, both separately and together. Expect to spend a lot of time generalizing to diverse conditions. That's where the dog learns to ignore distractions in the search environment, including environmental distractions and intentional food and toy distractions. Once proficient at each component separately, then we add the links in the chain together. Learn more below.
So, taking a look again at that behavior chain, the sniffer dog has two main jobs. Links 1, 2, and 3, the beginning of the chain, are where to go. So going to source, the highest concentration of target odor. And the other main job is what to do when they get there. Link number 4, the indication behavior. And they earn the reward at the end of the chain. So what do indications look like? An indication is a consistent behavior that the sniffer dog performs after finding source. And it could be sit, down, freeze like a statue, bark, retrieve, dig, bite, practically anything that you can train a dog to do. It's up to you to decide. To narrow the options, the two that most of my students succeed with are focused attention, shown on the right. So that's a border collie staring at source, frozen like a statue, exactly where the nose is. And the other option on the left is my Brittany sitting and staring at the target odor. So a thing that people find very confusing is that I treat sitting down indications as equally correct. And part of the reason why is that dogs tend to lie down when scent is low, like it's under a bed, and they tend to sit when the scent is high, like behind a light switch or the top shelf of a bookshelf. There's also environmental considerations that can change whether it's more comfortable to sit or down. For example, if you're searching for a missing person in a farmer's field where crops are up to your chest, it's really hard to see your dog lying down, even if they are a huge dog. So in that situation, sitting tends to be preferable. So let's have a look at the sit and down.
Scent detection is a behavior chain where the dog navigates an invisible cloud of scent known as the scent plume. From the moment the handler gives the cue to search, the dog receives invisible olfactory cues. This bedbug dog detects target odor the moment he enters the room. He uses olfaction to navigate the invisible scent plume. which is distorted by ever-changing air currents. He is pinpointing the highest concentration of odor, also known as the source. When his nose reaches source, that's his cue to indicate until released to his reward. The handler does not give a cue to indicate.
Okay, so question from Montana. Do I work through the steps linearly, or do I work scent pads and tracks while at the same time building the indication? So I would train the indication and the search at the same time, but the indication requires more focus. So at the beginning of every session, I start with an indication and I reward the dog for whatever criteria for success are on the indication. And then if the dog has more energy, I'm going to let them rest for 10 minutes and I'm going to train searches. And when I'm training the search for beginner dogs, I'm going to reward the instant their nose gets to source. So I'm doing both things at the same time, but there's separate criteria. And I want to make sure I balance that out. Part of the reason why is that tracking dogs need to do two things to succeed. They need to follow the track layer's footsteps, follow the track, and they need to find any evidence left behind, like gloves, articles, pens, and shoes. And in a detection dog or a pet nosework dog doing competitions, they still need both of those things. They need to search and they need to indicate. The indicate, I think, is harder and it requires more focus because the dogs don't necessarily want to naturally stop sniffing, stop running to do the indication. So it's up to us as handlers and trainers to build the value of all parts of that behavior chain. So think of starting with the last step first, the indication, but it's okay if you train the other links separately at the same time. Eventually you want every link to be strong and only then will you add them together. So I need to tell you about aggressive alerts. Aggressive alerts actually have nothing to do with bite risk, so it's a bit of a misnomer. It means that the dog disturbed the scent. They perform behaviors you wouldn't want a bomb dog to do to the bomb, like aggressively pawing, digging, chewing, biting, mouthing, retrieving, destroying the stuff in the search environment. Those are normal canine behaviors that dogs frequently offer, but they lead to faults or failure in most scent detection disciplines. If you want to succeed in scent detection, set up your searches so your dog is not tempted to dig at scent and use errorless learning to make it almost guaranteed that they're going to succeed. So for example, to teach a retrieve, which I do with my hunting dogs, I start by teaching them to hold and give a PVC tube, so a plastic tube, not a tasty bird wing, because it gets rid of that competing motivator. If the first thing I show them is a tasty bird wing, they're going to offer stuff that I probably don't want, like chomping it, running away, eating it, and so on. So it's a carefully constructed scent detection behavior chain. I want you to check out this video of Marty. The way that Marty was trained for search and rescue was apparently there was target odor in a series of coffee cans. And when he found the can with the person's sock, he would knock it over with his paw and get his reward. So when he came to me, he needed to be retrained for scent detection competition because digging and knocking things over would be faulted. So we got him to do a sit or down indication instead. We used wooden boxes and weighed them down, made sure that the structural integrity was good. We placed them against a wall to limit the movement. And we needed to, on a retrain, as many times as he had pawed at the coffee cans in the beginning, we have to do even more times of a passive indication of sit or down. So here's a look at the finished product after retraining with Marty. So scent detection is a continuum that can be used in a lot of different ways depending on what your goals are. So a wild dog that is hunting for food would usually do the entire prey sequence. They're going to search, smell, see, stalk, chase, grab, and eat the prey animals. Those are natural dog behaviors, and it's higher stakes for the dog. Another place you could sit on the continuum is finding food for fun. So all of us can hide food for our dogs to find. It's a good way to play, recreation, exercise, and enrichment. And the dog's going to do what comes naturally. It's inherently rewarding. So they can find the scent they want, the food, and just go for it. In the middle of the continuum is training them to find a target odor, which usually does not have inherent value. So for example, your dog starts interested in finding food, but not as interested in finding bed bugs. That's why we have to build the value for a target odor like bed bugs. And in this stage, they're going to fail if there's aggressive alerts like biting and digging, because you wouldn't want the bomb dog to dig at the bomb. That's an unsafe performance. Hunting dogs find and indicate birds instead of chasing and eating the bird. So that's because there's a human partner in this equation. And the human partner wants to interrupt the prey sequence in a way that's desirable for us. Another added level of complexity in this continuum is that in professional detection and the higher levels of nosework competition, the dog needs to ignore food distractions in the environment to find the target odor. So proofing teaches our dogs to delay gratification. Food and toy distractions are expected and inevitable in deployments like searching a restaurant for bed bugs or client homes. There's going to be human food and sometimes pet food that the dog needs to ignore. And in nosework competition, the judge must plant distractions of food and toys that the dog must ignore to find the target odor in order to pass. So the dog can't just go for it. Notice that continuing to have your dog find food will not train your dog to ignore food and distractions and pass a scent detection test. And finally, at the other extreme is the full-time professional detection dog. So daily searches are long, they require high motivation. The whole advantage of a dog is searching large areas faster than a human could with visual inspection. For example, search and rescue, the dog is faster than us looking with our eyes only. There's longer searches, fewer rewards, higher stakes for the humans, which can include things like lawsuits for things like a missed cancer diagnosis. So in those cases, an indication helps to improve reliability, precision, and safety. So check out this video of Bo, thanks to Tracy and Irikana for her cardboard chaos demonstration. Bo is a Doberman that I've been training for scent detection competition, but as a young pup, she was increasing his confidence by having him find food amidst a bunch of obstacles. Here goes with Bo. Okay, so great job. Bo is showing some really good confidence there around the noises. I wouldn't want to intentionally do anything that might scare or hurt the dog. And notice that the motion of that plastic container made it more exciting and more likely for him to grab it and run around with it, which is fun for the dog, but which would be undesirable for nose work competition. So perfect for that purpose, but less good for nose work competition. So here's an example of two of my bed bug detection dogs, and they are searching for food in a small space. So I have to feed them anyways. I'm going to use their food in a fun way. Here's what it looks like. And my sneaky goal here is getting them to work in confined spaces. And incidentally, one thing that they offer early on is when they're a bit confused about the jobs. So I have a different word and a different outfit and a different location for finding food as opposed to finding a target odor. But if they indicate food or a toy, like a food stuffed ball, I never praise them for it, and they don't intentionally get rewarded for that. I would just say, oh, you found it, good for you. If you want it, you go get it. So important only to indicate target odor, not indicate food and toys. So a question from Calgary. Are there some dogs or some breeds that aren't good at tracking? What percentage of dogs succeed at tracking class? So at tracking class so far, 100% of dogs have succeeded according to my criteria. I don't necessarily think that breed is a good way to judge ability. And I think the secret is finding what motivates each unique dog. So finding what motivates them is the motivation for them to track. In scent detection class, every dog has passed so far. There was only one dog that didn't do scent detection searches as good as they otherwise might have, because they were ill. So they were actually dying of cancer and they weren't that interested in their food. So the dog was doing the searches and got the rewards. But I think that the motivation suffered on account of the physical status. So it's really important to always start with a taste test before you give your dog a cue to work or do a scent detection search. And ways of doing that would be give them 10 food rewards away from odor and see if they love them. So failures would be they spit out the food, they don't enthusiastically gobble up all the treats, or the other end of the continuum is they take food, but in an unusually sharky, agitated manner. You can, instead of just putting 10 food pieces on the floor, you can hand them in your hand. Or if you want to use toy, you're still going to do the taste test. You're going to test the value of the reward by asking your dog to play using that toy. Now, the taste test, as I think of it, is inspired by Andrew Ramsey, and I use it at every class. So if you fail the taste test, you can't train. It means that you need better food, a hungrier dog, or both. It usually happens when the dog is overwhelmed by the environment where you're asking them to work. So another thing you can try is moving further away from the distractions, but you have to change your plan to fit what your dog is giving you on that day in that environment. So sometimes you have to go back to kindergarten. If your dog would work for dry dog food at home, and now you're outside wanting to track, maybe that dog food isn't good enough anymore, and you have to give a better reward to overcome the distraction level in the environment, like going to moist, stinky tripe, or something that the dog perceives as better than the environmental distractions. So it's really important to know what the errors are in scent detection so that you can avoid them, or at least minimize them. False alerts, also known as a false positive, is when the dog indicates when the target odor is not present. Missed hides, also known as false negatives, mean that the dog doesn't indicate even though the target odor is actually present. And you have to consider which is more crucial in your discipline. So for example, if your dog is detecting cancer or peanuts for a peanut allergy, it's worse to miss hides. So having a false alert when the peanuts aren't there isn't as bad as missing a peanut that could have killed the handler. Notice that most failures are not related to scent detection. Based on what I see, most handlers underestimate the number of repetitions required in the varying environment for the dog to perform that skill anywhere. A lot of teams have insufficient socialization with non-household contacts. So then if you take them to a boarding kennel and ask them to find scent, they would be overwhelmed by the distraction as a separate issue, not a scent detection skill.